my greetings is as well in order. If you're in other parts of the world, then I would say good morning and good evening, depending on where you are. Bonjour, bonsoir. How are we all doing? We're excited to have you all here today. Share this moment with us where we have decided to engage and expect someone who knows Nigeria in and out to tell us exactly what the energy transition in Nigeria looks like. And I'm sure a lot of you would want to really hear what she has to say and the insights, the knowledge, and what is next for Nigeria as long as the energy sector or transition is concerned. My name is Gifty Boatema Anan, and I am the country representative. I am the country representative for the Women in Finance and Investment Network here in Ghana. Our president, who happens to be the person of Miss Ayushi Dekshita, sends her greetings and her regards to every one of you. And I would say it's just a little bit about WIFIN, and then we quickly dive into exactly why we are here today. I'm sure for those of you who are Ghanaians, myself inclusive, we have a very important football match coming up today. Olawunmi. We have something very important. Black Stars are playing today, and as a people, we want to say congratulations to the Black Stars for making it in there, and we're wishing them all the best. And I know Olawunmi is supporting us all the way from Nigeria because we are sister countries. So quickly, WIFIN, or the Women in Finance and Investment Network, I'm sure you might have heard a lot about it. And what is it? WIFIN is a network of female professionals from all across the breadth and length of Africa and Asia who are deeply concerned about diversity and inclusion, particularly in the finance and investment sector. And so what we do is that every initiative, every program, every project we run directly helps accelerate the growth of females in the finance and investment management industry. And even beyond, everything that concerns the female professional is directly what concerns us, basically why we're here today, to receiving members from different parts of the world. So if you're not yet a member of the Women in Finance and Investment Network, you would want to do yourself the honor of joining us as soon as you can. You can visit our website and www.wifinglobal.org. Once you visit our website, you get all the information you need, and then you can reach some of our country representatives on LinkedIn, depending on the country you are in. If you're in Ghana, you can reach out to me. My name is Gifty Boatema Anan. If you are in Kenya or Botswana, you could reach out to Lisa in Nkatha. She is in Kenya. She's in Botswana as well. We have Janvi, who happens to be in Mauritius, our country representative. We have Nishma, who is also an executive of WIFIN in Mauritius and other parts of the world. And so we are spread all over, more concerned and focused on Asia and Africa. So if you are in any of these two parts, you don't want to hesitate, you just want to give us a call, send a message, and then join us. I want to say a very big thank you. WIFIN is categorized in what we call, membership levels. There are membership categories. We have what we call the fellow members. We also have professional members, and then we have student members. And so our students are not left out. If you're a student and you want to join this association, bingo, you could be a part of us through our student membership category. And then if you are a professional, an entry-level professional or mid-level professional, and you want to join us, then you use the route of the professional membership category. And then if you are in the leagues of the Olawunmis, if you are in the leagues of, if you're a woman leader, and then you have been working in the industry for 10 years and above, impacting the people in the industry, then you qualify to be a part of our fellows who are so special to us because they do quite a number of things. What Olawunmi is doing here today is one of the roles that fellow members play. What they do is that they share insights and they share knowledge with the rest of the world, with other members who are in the professional category, other members who are students. And then this is a way that they contribute to building these people in their respective fields. And so I want to say that a very big thank you to Olawunmi for availing herself to give us the knowledge and the insight that we need as far as the energy sector of Nigeria is concerned. Oh goodness, I'm so happy to be here today. I would quickly say once again, you are welcome and thank you for joining us. A few rules of engagement. You may want to use the buttons, the appropriate buttons at the right time. If along the line you have questions coming in at the guest speaker, please use the Q&A button and then send in your questions. We're going to read it and she's going to answer them appropriately. And those are the things. If you have something you want to say and then you say it, we haven't responded yet, just have patience. We're going to reach out shortly. Thank you so much. Olawunmi Olatunji. She has a name I've always loved. I mean, I'm sure she doesn't really know, but previously I used to mention her surname a lot. One day she told me, she said, Gifty, my first name is Olawunmi. Olawunmi Olatunji. Olawunmi, I want to first of all say that you are welcome to this platform. And thank you so much for giving us your time and deciding to share with us what is happening in Nigeria with energy transition, financing the energy transition, what is happening in Nigeria. We are so excited. What we're going to do here today is going to be in a particular order. First of all, our guest speaker is going to help us with a brief presentation. She's going to give us more like an overview of what Nigeria looks like and what is next for Nigeria as far as the topic is concerned. And next, we're going to give her some questions from our end to help her really touch on all the facets of the topic. And that's how it's going to go. The third session is going to be taking questions from the audience. And so if you're here, you should be getting ready to put down your questions if you may have one. I'm so excited. I'm going to briefly introduce her, as though I'm not going to talk much. First of all, I mentioned that Olawunmi Olatunji is a fellow member of the Women in Finance and Investment Network. In Nigeria, she's doing an amazing work with women leaders. She is the CEO of Brockville. I don't know how many of you have ever checked out the company, but she handles, she's the Chief Executive Officer of Brockville Investments Limited, which is located in Nigeria. She happens to be a CGIA charter holder, which is a Chartered Global Investment Analyst Institute. She's a charter holder of the CGIA, well-versed and filled with knowledge about almost everything finance. And so today we are privileged to hear from her. Olawunmi, I want to say that you are welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would you give a few words?
Well, thank you so much, Gifty. And my words, not really related to finance, but to football. So,
okay.
Nigeria didn't qualify for the World Cup, but I'm very excited for Ghana and I think Cameroon and Morocco. So I'm going to choose the team I support. I think I'm going to make to the quarterfinals so that I will know the team I'll be rooting for. But right now, I'm rooting for all the African countries. They'll have all my support, but congratulations to Ghana and to the rest of the countries. So,
great. I think you decided to take the safer side to tell us that you're rooting for all the American countries. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit biased. I'm going to say root for Ghana, you know.
I guys have to perform well to get my attention. So if you perform
oh, well, That's exciting. That's exciting to know that our sister country is actually rooting for us. It gives us enough strength to go and play with all our might and play as if our very lives depend on it. Once again, we wish the Black Stars all the best. Olawunmi, at this point, I'm going to allow you to take us through the rudiments of the topic and what exactly you have for us today. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Gifty. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on what part of the world you're listening to me from. And it's very exciting that, the number of people here, you want to hear about what's happening in Nigeria, particularly in the energy transition and how we can finance projects that, pertain to this sector. So, I'll go ahead with my presentation. And what I have here is a plate of sumptuous jollof rice. So before I begin my presentation, I just want to take you through like an imagination lane. And I'm not going to go into the debate of which jollof rice is, the most delicious, whether it's Ghanaian jollof or Nigerian jollof or Senegalese jollof. That's not the point of my picture. But I mean, this plate of jollof rice probably brings memories to us. And I know people that swear about the fact that jollof rice that is cooked with firewood tastes the best. Why? Because you can taste that smoky feel, the original, the natural taste of jollof rice. A lot of us can attest to it and say, no, if I eat jollof rice cooked, in any other way, whether by electric cooker or gas, it's not the same thing as this natural cooking. But now imagine a woman that has to sit by this firewood every day of her life, and this is the only way she cooks. I don't know if any of you that have gone through this before, but I went through it at a point in my life when I was probably a teenager, and we were having a party. We're preparing for a party, and we had this big box of chicken. That's not the chicken you just buy just 1 kilogram, but a whole giant box of chicken. And my elder sister was assigned to cook that, but she actually forced me to cook or to boil, to cook and fry this whole box of chicken with firewood. It was not an experience I want to really, because I can imagine I can remember clearly the way it affected my eyes, the way the smoke affected my eyes, the way you had to dodge to make sure that you don't get your leg or the part of your body, charred with fire or something. So it's an experience. But imagine a woman having to go through this every single day. Like, so think of the health implication, the health, on the lungs, and all that. And then also, of course, if you are familiar with Nigeria, Bayelsa, Port Harcourt, you know there are instances of soot in the air that people breathe in. So if you can see the picture to my left, where the ant that is filled with soot, and of course buses or means of transport, or even energy sources that are not very clean. So this is the question, or this is the issue, the challenge that energy transition is trying to address. So my presentation today will give an overview of what the energy transition really is about. Then I talk, bring it home and talk about Nigeria and energy transition. And then I would go further to talk about financing consideration, and wrap that up with question and answer and how we're positioned to help for that. Right. So this picture talks about what exactly energy transition is. So, and it talks about the energy mix, but what exactly is energy transition? So basically what we're trying to do and what the world is trying to do is to move from a global energy source that is driven by fossil fuel to a zero carbon phase. And what does fossil fuel mean? We're all perhaps very familiar that fossil fuel starts from coal, gas, oil, and anything that is made from dead dinosaur, dead microorganisms that were buried like millions of years ago, and they've transitioned and been transformed into the fuel that we use today. And the problem with those energy sources is that they are filled with a lot of carbon monoxide. And if we remember our biology, as we do not want to breathe in carbon dioxide, we don't want to breathe in CO2. We want to breathe in oxygen and then breathe out carbon dioxide as human beings. So if there's so much carbon dioxide in the earth, apart from the fact that it's not even healthy in terms of what we breathe, it causes a lot of, there's a lot of climate issues in terms of heat. It leads to flooding, and even beyond that, there's a lot of livelihood if you think about the agri space. So these are the kind of effects of the climate change, and what energy transition is doing is trying to address that. Now, how do we achieve this energy transition? Is about being a bit more efficient in the energy that we use. It's about thinking of renewable sources of energy, alternative sources of energy to what we're used to. So the point is this: the world has gotten too hot due to industrialization, which is, you know, having cars, electricity, technology that we have today on Zoom. And we want to limit the global temperature to 1.5 degrees when compared to pre-industrial levels. So basically that's what energy transition is trying to achieve. But we all know that we can't just jump from where we are in terms of being dependent on fossil fuel to a totally non-fossil environment, or a totally non-fossil world, because it's going to be very tough. So what we need to do is to have a mix, and that's what the world is doing. We're having a world mix. So the picture you have here, if you look at the figures, it's comparing changes in global energy mix from a period of, say, 2018 to 2040. Like it's based on policy scenarios by the International Energy Agency. So it's like a projection. And it says that, and if you look, these figures, the 4,000 and 4,009 is measured in million tons of oil equivalent, that's MTOE. Based on IEA's energy policy, oil would take about 28% of the global energy mix for that 2040. And then you see gas is going to actually increase by 30% in that period. And then coal is supposed to reduce and shrink. However, we've seen that because of the challenges and the problems between Ukraine and Russia, and the short of the stoppage or the short of gas supplies to European countries like Germany, they have restarted a lot of coal mines, and that's really not the direction we're going to, because these coal mines have been shut down for a while, but then they have to pick it up again because, like they would say, survival is first important before we talk about sustainability. But the point I'm making here is that we need to go to a point where we shut down very dirty fuels. And if you compare those fuels, coal, oil, and gas, in terms of the carbon emission that they make, coal is the highest and gas is the cleanest. So we're moving from that situation where if you can imagine when we watch TV movies where you have coal powered trains, the amount of soot that goes out of those engines are really much. So if you're not close to a coal mine, but that's a coal power plant, that will give you some insight into it. Now, the future also expect that other renewables will double by a lot of percent. By, for instance, other renewables will double by increase by 300%. From 300 to 1,300. Then, of course, bioenergy as well would also increase drastically. There's less increase for nuclear projected, but there's also some increase for hydro. Now, those are all renewable sources. However, things like firewood that I showed them, the woman cooking jollof rice, will definitely fall out of favor. So things like charcoal and firewood will fall out of favor. So this gives you an idea of how the world is supposed to move away from dirty fuels towards cleaner fuels. It's supposed to be a mix, right? And gradually we transition, but it's not going to happen in a day. So let's talk about energy transition in Nigeria, especially because if you look at a country like Nigeria, Nigeria is an oil-producing nation, extremely gas-rich. And if you look at our gas reserves, it's over 200 billion stock of gas, and we have even unproven that are not even proven, even up to 600. So, and the fact that over 70% of the country's revenues and even 90% of foreign income come from directly from crude exports, right? So that this kind of transition can seem to have a very negative impact on the economy, because you do not get the kind of revenues that you were relying on for an extremely long amount of time. So what would energy transition mean to us? Of course, if you look at it in isolation, you would say we do not want to go in that direction because we lose our revenue. But the point is diversifying the economy to ensure that we have other sources of revenue like agriculture, and tourism and manufacturing and all that is important. But beyond that, transitioning from oil, an oil-based, an oil-driven economy to a gas-driven economy becomes even very, very important. Like I've mentioned, the volume of gas that we actually have as a nation, but gas is the driver for the for moving the economy forward. And if you think about it from the perspective of the government that had declared this decade as the decade of gas, meaning that a lot of investments, a lot of activities will go into gas, especially for gas to power, because we see that 50%, about 48 to 50% of people living in Nigeria do not even have access to constant electricity. Those of us living in the cities, we might not know that it's that bad, especially when we go to the remote areas. But there's a lot of people that do not even have the kind of electricity that we have. So the point is that we know that it will take us a while. We need to move using gas as our transition fuel to achieve that carbon neutrality. Now, while the whole world has set their targets to achieve net zero carbon as 2050, Nigeria has said our net zero will be 2060, which will give us more time to put those kind of infrastructure in place, because it takes a lot of financial infrastructure, it takes a lot of money and even time to put infrastructure in place that will help us harness our gas resources to the point where we will now use them to generate electricity. But so to achieve carbon neutrality, we've set 2060. But what exactly is carbon neutrality? I want to ask. So this means that we want to have a balance between the carbon that we emit and the carbon that we absorb. So if you are emitting carbon, you're using maybe like the cooking that I've said, or in transportation and all of those sources, we want to have a balance in that. And it's very important for us as Nigeria. A just and an equitable climate action is very important. A just and equitable energy transition is very important, because Africa as a whole has only generated about 5% of the total carbon emission in the whole globe, in the whole world. And so we cannot just sit and lose our resources, lose our revenues, and lose a lot of livelihoods because we are trying to just transit rapidly. So we need to do it in a way that the impact on the industries that exist will not be too detrimental, but will be gradual. That is one. Number two, we need to be able to attract the kind of investment that will help us take us to that stage of where we are high carbon or high dependent on fossil fuel for our revenues, to the point where we begin to make more revenues from power generation and from renewable energies and all that. So basically, we want to make sure that we do not, the country and even the continent, because like I said, Africa's contribution to the whole climate change and carbon in the energy system is the least compared to all the developing world. So that's why requiring support from all this is very important. So basically for Nigeria, gas is our transition fuel. The government has said it, categorically, even at COP27, where it would have happened in Egypt. So gas is cleaner. Like I said, when you rank compared to coal and oil, gas is much cleaner. If you remember a bit of the science that you learned in secondary school, gas has methane is like the lightest form of gas is CH4. So it just has one atom of carbon, compared to oil that has maybe C2H6 or C6H10 or something like that. Right. So, and we must also harness our gas, for gas to power. We must also harness gas for auto gas. So rather than using diesel for buses, diesel is a distillate from, or a refinery product from oil, and it causes a lot of fumes. We can move to gas for that, and that's for auto gas. Of course, solar becomes very, very important as a renewable, because if you go to the northern part of Nigeria, there is a lot of sun. It's extremely hot. They get temperatures at about maybe 38 degrees or even more. So it makes a lot of sense to have a lot of solar farms and solar grids in those regions that do not even have access to the kind of electricity that exists in other areas. So it's very important. Of course, biofuels are also very important. We already have hydro power plants, as much as we have gas power plants. We also have hydro power plants, some of our dams, Kanji Dam and all that. But we can look for ways to get even more geothermal energy by using the power of the geothermal gradient. That's how temperature changes even with depth of the earth. And I've seen some presentations by some service firms where they say they want to harness abandoned wells because temperature increases with depth, and if we want to harness that to generate electricity. Of course, there's a lot of feasibility that must go into that. Then we have some other sources, so other opportunities for that kind of geothermal energy. So it's very important for us to have that very robust approach to energy transition, and that's exactly what the plan in the energy transition plan. So for us in Nigeria, it is key for us to think of energy transition in terms of being equitable and just. Now let's look at the key sources of emissions, Nigeria's total emissions. So the yellow is the power sector, and it has the highest. So this is 48 metric MT CO2 equivalent. And then transportation comes next. This is cooking comes next at 40. Then the industries manufacturing at 29, and 19 is the oil and gas energy. So these are the sectors that must be looked at. And then there's like a very key timeline and framework on how we want to look at the sectors that have high emissions, that contribute 65% of total emissions in Nigeria, and how we want to attack them, and also definitely reduce that emissions to achieve what we're doing. But to get all this done, there's a lot of financing that is required. So look at this. 1.9 trillion is required to get to net zero by 2060. Remember I said Nigeria's target is 2060. And this is $410 billion above projected usual spending. And so this translates to $10 billion annually. Now, let me put this in perspective. Nigeria's 2022 budget was 17.2 trillion naira, which is about $41 billion in dollars. The energy transition budget, therefore, it's about 1/4 of the 2020 budget. So it does 10 billion annually, is about 1/4 of 41 billion. So obviously, this is not business as usual. So where is this money coming from? Remember, I started out talking about Nigeria and saying we want a just and equitable transition. So we will be needing a lot of support from international investors, contributing only 5%. For if we want to transit in an equitable manner, then the kind of finance and investment was come from the world's greatest polluters. Now, of course, our government too has a very important role to play in ensuring that there's an enabling environment, especially enabling business environment, improving the ease of doing business. Also policies that support power grid. So right now in the power sector, they have to bring in kind of policies that would support the power sector so that there can be mini grids that can actually generate electricity and get their own returns directly from the mini grids. And of course, project sponsors must be able to build bankable projects. And then even professionals, you and I that having careers in this space, it's important for us to understand finance, impact finance, and also ESG financing. With that kind of knowledge and the support that we need, then definitely achieving this target will become even easier. Now, this screen just tries to talk a bit more about that incremental cost. So BAU is business as usual, and we require, if we're not worrying about energy transition and we just want to do what we're doing, we are at 1.5 trillion. But if we decide to achieve net zero by 2060, net zero carbon emission by 2060, Nigeria needs $410 billion in addition, and that takes us to 1.9 trillion. And most of this capex, if you look at the other screen to my right, it shows that most of the capex comes from power and then transmission and distribution infrastructure, which is the T&D infrastructure, which gives a total of about 20 billion needed. So power is the key focus of the energy transition. And this information was gotten from the energy transition plan, which was a well documented the website and documents that shows the direction and the plan for energy transition in Nigeria over the next couple of days. Okay, so the next couple of slides I've given an overview of what energy transition is and how Nigeria fits into that space, how we plan to achieve it. But now let's just go forward and talk about financing. Right, so what are the kinds of financing that we should be looking at when we want to talk about I'm of course, we initially talked about what Nigeria needs, but projects will not be executed or implemented or even idealized by the government. Definitely, the government will just put the structures in place in terms of policies, regulation, and everything. But companies, corporates, project sponsors, project developers, and entrepreneurs are the ones that would come up with the kind of projects that they want to do. So, so this slide tries to address the financing need. So we have equity, debt, mezzanine, and strategic. So this talks about the kind of financing needed across the energy sector. So not only for renewable, but for gas and all that as well, right? So we can talk about equity in terms of public offers, which is the initial public when a company or a company is now public and they need to get funds from the stock exchange. Rights issues is the additional that is given to shareholders that exist. Then we have private equities or private placements are also very key. Debt, becomes very important as well. RBL, which is reserve-based lending, is the kind of debt that is very common, especially in the oil and gas industry. So it will be relevant for gas, where the reserve asset, the gas asset itself, is the security for the particular loan that has been taken. Of course, project finance will be useful. It's very useful in bringing together several financiers to come together to provide the debt needed for maybe an infrastructure, for instance, a power grid, a renewable grid, or a power plant. So if it's maybe a solar grid or a power plant, something like there's this power plant that is featured by the government. So that comes under public-private partnership. The Ondo State government, they have this Alagbapa power plant that is set up to focus on powering their own community over there. And so that's a public-private partnership to execute. And for that, what they did was to go to the FMDQ, which is the platform where bonds are raised in Nigeria. So bond is definitely another kind of debt that comes in place. Of course, there's the regular corporate finance where you get a term loan or overdraft, some other forms. So of course, mezzanine is some kind of convertible debt, can be converted, where debt can be converted later to equity, right? So others are strategic, where you basically sell the assets you have. Carry arrangement is useful in the oil and gas industry, because where there's a situation where there's like maybe a joint venture between the oil company and the international oil company and the government. So in that instance, where the government has not provided the funds for executing the project, the oil company can, the IOC can decide to execute everything, and then they will get their returns back in oil, and that would form the carry arrangement, and they have to get some kind of rebate and all that. Now, another form of finance that is very key and important for especially for renewables and climate-focused kind of finance is blended finance. And basically what blended finance means is that you're looking at blending different forms of financing. So you're looking at, okay, financing that is needed financing from, let's say, private equity, where they need a high return for the risk they are taking, compared to impact investors, where they have more room and more robustness to take on larger risk. So when you blend those kind of financing, and each of these organizations are able to achieve their own objectives without any conflict. So that's what blended finance is. So impact investors can come in, and then private equity or venture capital can also come in and form the kind of financing that works. So that's very key for climate, because there's a lot of patience that is needed for the financing. Of course, grants, everybody loves grants. It will come in very handy as a part of the mix for financing. Right, so my short presentation was just supposed to run through, the whole what's energy transition was that. So basically, we've seen that we need to, achieve energy transition, but right now we have to stay with the mix, and these kind of infrastructure, this kind of projects can be financed from a wide variety of sources. So right now, I think I will take a pause so that we can do questions, and then I will be able to provide the answers as well.
Okay, Olawunmi, that was brief but very comprehensive. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Very brief but comprehensive presentation on the energy sector and what Nigeria. This is beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm sure those watching are really learning a lot. I'm going to take my first question. Now, I think the world and its conversations, one way or the other, tries to shift with time. Previously, we were having conversations on diversity and inclusion, but it looks as if currently the concept of energy transition is the major conversation all over the world. Why is that?
Okay, so diversity and inclusion is still a part of, if you think about how we live, a lot of the impact of climate change affects women differently from the way it affects men. Let me give you an example. In agriculture, for instance, women are often, especially the peasant farmers and the small older farmers, a lot of them are the ones that go to the field, to harvest crops and to plant. So imagine the temperature of the earth continuously increasing to the point that it becomes extremely difficult, right, to even do your daily activities. It affects them in that way. Then, of course, the drought that begins to happen when it comes to climate change also affects women in a very, very unique way as compared to the way it affects the other, the male gender. So energy transition and the whole climate change talk is very key now because we realized that we need to develop a sustainable, or we need to improve the way we live on Earth to become more sustainable, so that the Earth that we have today, we will be able to leave something for even the generations to come. We do not want to, there was the impact of the rising temperature of the Earth is so huge, it affects people of different locations, whether you are in the solar ice caps where the ice begins to melt and there's a lot of flooding, or we are in sub-Saharan Africa where we are and the temperatures get extremely, extremely hot. So it's very key for us to understand that the future of the Earth, has to be protected, and that's why energy transition becomes more important now.
Oh, I love the fact that you focused the answer on posterity. We're looking into the future as like we're people getting into these conversations because we need to protect ourselves today and protect the future as well. Interesting. At this point, I'm going to say that if you are on here as a participant and then you have questions, Olawunmi just did a very brief and comprehensive presentation. If you have a question for her, please quickly put that in the Q&A box. I'm going to read it out to her. But even before we do that, we're still asking some few questions from this side. Olawunmi, I'm going to ask another question. For an oil producing nation like Nigeria, let me know, where will this new wave of energy transition impact countries' foreign revenue?
Okay, I think I tried to touch a bit on that, right? And definitely, if there's no proper planning, the impact is going to be very huge. But the point is that ideally, if you look at the country's economy, say 60 years ago, before oil was discovered, there was cocoa, there was the granite pyramid, there was a bit of diversity and a very interesting mix. But right now it's focused. So what is key is for us to, improve. See, I know over time, we've been trying to go back, to improve those sources of revenue that have been abandoned. But there's a lot of hard work and a lot more that needs to be done to bring back diversity and a very, very good blend and mix in the kind of revenues that the country has. That is on the one side. On the second side, for Nigeria, and I think every country's energy transition story must be very unique to it, in the sense that you see countries like Netherlands, for instance, they might focus on wind as their own sort of energy transition, because that's what they know they have. But for us, I'd mentioned earlier that we have over 200 billion scoop of gas. proven reserve. And then the one that we know we have, but we have not, maybe proven it with drilling and hasn't been tested, is about 600. So for us, our energy mix and our energy transition story must be focused on gas. Gas for power, very, very key. Gas for power, because currently, a lot of our energy comes from, that's electricity. When I say energy now, I'm talking about electricity precisely, comes from gas, hydro, and a little from renewables. Yes, but we must start with gas as that transition, because if you see what happened in Europe, where Russia, cut the gas pipelines and they're not able to supply gas to Germany and some European nations, they just started bringing up their coal plants instantly, because people must live, people must survive, right? So energy is very key to survival of any issue. So we want to move Nigeria from energy poverty, and we must do that by using what we have in abundance. However, solar and other renewables are very important too, because as much as I said we have gas in abundance, we also have sunlight in abundance. And I said temperatures in the north are very high because there's sunlight in abundance. So what is key is for us to have a mix that's very fluid and is easy to balance, so that every source of energy becomes very important. In achieving that, it helps us secure our revenues, because there's, when you talk about revenues, it's from the government makes revenue from tax, makes revenue from maybe selling crude, currently in Nigeria. But if we're able to, for instance, we can export energy, we can export gas, and make more revenue from that. So that balance is very key for us where we are in Nigeria. You're muted.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Olawunmi, I think you can stop sharing your screen now. Yes, I think you can stop sharing your screen now. Great. And so if you just joined us, Olawunmi has already done her presentation, and then currently we are diving into some few questions. If you have a question right here, do not hesitate to hit the Q&A box, and then let Olawunmi answer all your questions. Okay, Olawunmi, so I'm going to ask the third question, and this is it. What are the opportunities? What are the opportunities that you see this energy transition bring to us? What are the opportunities?
Okay. So I will look at the opportunities in two ways. First, I'll look at the opportunities for career development, and also for business development, entrepreneurship, or project development, and all that. For instance, when we want to, I said earlier on that the how for us to transition energy is for us to become a bit more efficient in the way we handle our energy, and that will require a lot of technology. So for instance, there's something called carbon capture, utilization, and storage. It's a new technology. That is the kind of thing that, as professionals, that someone that is interested in this kind of space, you can get the kind of right knowledge to apply, and you become more valuable as a professional. There's also, for people in finance specifically, not even technical people, the knowledge of impact finance is very key. The knowledge of ESG financing is very key, because a lot of lenders begin to put those policies in place to say, if you are not compliant with some certain regulations or certain point of view in terms of sustainability, we're not going to lend to you. So people that work in companies to advise them, that will be consultants, that begins to open opportunities for people. And as business owners, it's obvious, we need power. We need power, we need electricity in Nigeria, we need energy. So if you are a solar entrepreneur, set up a power grid, the financing is available. It's just for you to understand what to do. If you want to do gas to power, if you want to do gas to industry, for instance, maybe it's for a fertilizer industry or something, it's obviously available. So many opportunities, I can keep talking, but basically we just need to look at it in two directions: for business or project sponsors, and for career.
Thank you so much, Olawunmi. I hope I'm not muted this time. Am I muted? Okay, thank you so much for sharing with us the opportunities. Of course, I believe that if the conversation is shifting to this point, then it means that there's definitely some opportunities in there. And just like you mentioned, categorize them into career opportunities, business opportunities. The next thing is that we're going to talk about funding. A lot of project developers actually depend on funds to execute their projects. Now, we want to know from your perspective how these people can attract funding for these huge projects that they embark on. Olawunmi? Okay. I don't know if the audience can let me know if they can hear me, because I can't hear from Olawunmi no more. If you can hear me, please write in the, oh goodness. I can no longer hear from Olawunmi, so if you can hear me, please let me know, just quickly, let me know if I'm on the right track as I help Olawunmi get back to us. So if you're new here, we've just been discussing, having an extensive discussion on financing the energy transition in Nigeria, how it is going and what is next for Nigeria as far as energy transition is concerned. Our guest speaker has been speaking at length at a few of the things. I remember she mentioning that, first of all, we would have to depend on what we have and what is available to us. And she mentioned for a few of them, Nigeria has available gas, and which is a great starting point as far as energy transition is concerned. And she also mentioned that, okay, I've got, okay. Alexia said we can hear you, but lost Olawunmi. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm actually trying to get her back on board. Thank you so much for letting me know. I can hear you well, but Olawunmi isn't here. Fantastic. Okay, we can hear Olawunmi. So I think it is clear. I'm trying to see how best I can get Olawunmi on board. Kindly hold on as I push her in so that we can put the cherry on the cake and bring our webinar to a successful end. At this point, if you have any questions and you haven't asked them yet, or if you have questions I haven't touched on, please do best to go to the Q&A and then quickly send in your questions. Immediately Olawunmi comes on board, I'm gonna add her in. Okay, great. Great, so Olawunmi is joining us briefly. She's joining us briefly. Good, so like I was saying, Olawunmi said that as far as the energy transition in Nigeria is concerned, we have to start right where we are. And this relates to everybody. No matter the country, and even as an individual, if you're trying to start something, all you have to do is to start with what you have, where you are. And so she says that Nigeria has available solar and abundance of sun in the northern hemisphere. So we're looking. Okay, Olawunmi.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I can hear you. I'm really sorry. Something happened to my internet. I'm not quite sure.
No worries. That's okay. That's okay. That's why we're shifting energy transition. So will we be able to see you, or you would want to go ahead without a video?
For now, once I connect my laptop, I will go back. But for now, let me just, I'm using my mobile device.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. So I was asking a question before you froze out on us. I couldn't see you move. And so I was wondering, so I was asking a question that most of these people who undertake projects, energy transition projects, depend heavily on funding to see to the execution of such projects. And the question I'm asking is, how will these people get to attract the right funding for these heavily, financing these projects?
Okay. I mean, that's a very, 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 very good question. And it's a question that cuts across whatever kind of large projects that you're doing as a project sponsor, whether it's energy or construction, for instance, or something. And the key is, I look at two key aspects. First is bankability, and the second is environmental and social governance. So what is bankability? And I believe that many of us would have heard that word. Is a project bankable? How do you make a project bankable and all that? I mean, it's the meaning is similar to the word bankable. So basically, it has to do with the willingness of the financier or the financing institution to give finance to a project based on at a very reasonable interest rate, but based on their perception of risk, right? So it's a form of risk and reputation. They want to see, there's some things they're expected to see in a project, and they do a lot of analysis to achieve that. So because infrastructure projects, and this is where energy projects fall in place, all energy transition projects, and irrespective of the country where you are, really, a lot of these projects are complex and they are highly capital intensive. So banks and other financing institutions will do what due diligence. They do a lot of due diligence, technical due diligence. They'll do legal due diligence. They'll do a lot of market commerciality of the project, financial, regulatory. They do a lot of this to understand, because the project is complex. They can't just make the decision. It's not I want to buy a truck kind of business. We're talking millions of dollars, and they want to secure the funding that they have. So they do that due diligence that are very specific, that are bespoke to the project. So the due diligence done on a solar grid, for instance, someone that wants to set up a solar plant to provide electricity to a particular region. It's totally different from someone that wants to lay a pipeline to send gas from maybe Ondo State or from the Niger Delta to Lagos, or to Ondo State or something. So the kind of complexities are very different. So each of these takes the kind of time that is needed. So in order to ensure that your projects are bankable, you need to start thinking of those kind of considerations, economic, financial, technical, and even environmental. You know, the whole energy transition is based on the environment, right? So there's something called an environmental impact assessment. So how does your project affect the environment is very key. That must be done. The next thing that must also be considered is something called ESG, and I'm sure a lot of us in finance would have heard ESG investing. So it's a measure of risk by lenders and investors, and they are increasingly taking that ESG seriously. It's environmental, social, and governance. And it's a measure of a way where finance institutions can measure risk, like I said, in whatever project that they want to fund, including energy projects. So they assess the risk profile of portfolios regarding maybe climate risk and all that. So when you talk of the first word is environmental, so what is the impact of your project on the planet? Right, a lot of energy projects, you can easily say, I'm reducing carbon in the environment, so you get a good score for that. But beyond that, the social aspect, what is your organization impact on staff, customers, and the community? So you're thinking of social impact. How many people are you going to employ? How are you improving the lives of people in that community that your project is going to be located? Is very important, especially when it comes to power projects. There's a lot of, in the past, especially in the oil industry, there's been a lot of communal clashes, because the mindset of the people in the community is this crude oil, this reserve belongs to us. You company, you're coming in, you want to take what belongs to us. So you need to be able to put them in the loop and make them stakeholders. So even if you're setting a solar farm in a particular community, most likely you'll be taking agri-land to convert to a solar panel farm or something. So the farmers that used to use that place, how do you incorporate them? How do you compensate them? How do you make them part of this? Are you employing their children? Are you giving them some benefits? Are you building a school for them? So those kind of things becomes very, very important. The last is governance. How is the organization governed? Is it transparent? Very key. So some investors and companies, they avoid companies with poor ESG score because there's a rating system, there's a scoring system, and they begin to seek companies that are actively working to improve their ESG performance. So if your organization has poor environmental practice, you'll be subject to regulation and fines, and this might hurt your profit. So you don't want that. If your organization has poor social practices, you may face reputational damage and may even make you to lose customers or revenue at some point. Then the last is weak governance practice. If you have weak governance practice, for me, the most important or the easiest thing that would impact you will be fraud. You begin to have fraud and financial problems. And investors want to see that you have the right governance structure in place, there's a board in place, and there's a procedure for doing things. Before they give 5 million, 10 million, or even $1 million to a company or a project, they want to be sure that there are procedures and there's a place for everything and there's a procedure for everything. So basically what you want to do is to create that kind of strategy. Okay, if you are not in, so for energy companies, a lot of energy companies want to move from producing a lot of, now, I've mentioned CO2 earlier on, and that's what they call a greenhouse gas, so greenhouse emission, which causes climate change. So you want to reduce that by investing in gas or investing in solar or what have you. Then you want to promote a lot of inclusion and diversity amongst your employees. What are the kind of people that you employ? Do you employ people from only a certain tribe, or do you have 100% or maybe 90% male and no female? Also you need to start creating that balance and employing the right mix. And you want to improve also transparency in your supply chain. So so that is very, very, very key. And what ESG helps, the right ESG strategy does, is to help companies to attract investment, and even beyond attracting investment within the organization begins to do better, begin to improve their own efficiency, and they can manage risk even more effectively. And yes, even the employees are happier because they can be engaged a bit more. So I think that if project sponsors, project owners look at those two key things, bankability and the ESG concerns, then they promote their business in a way that will easily attract investments.
Wow, great. Olawunmi has been giving us all the information we need. I think if you're out there, and it's not even just about energy transition, what she just spoke about cuts across every field. If you want to be able to attract funding for whichever project you're doing, whether it's about child trafficking or whatever it's about, transparency, bankability, they're looking at all the stuff that she just mentioned. And so I hope that we listened well. If you were not able to get everything she said, Olawunmi is an expert and she's available on LinkedIn at all times. You can reach out to her. I think we have a question coming in. We're going to take it before I even come in with my very final question. And so Olawunmi, I'm reading the question here. It's from Dikshita, and she says, how impactful is the expansion of the off-grid power and renewables industry, utilizing foreign financial support and technology transfer is going to be if you look beyond Nigeria, let's say for the African continent? I don't know if you would want me to take the question again.
Please do.
Okay. Said, how impactful is the expansion of the off-grid power and renewables industry, utilizing foreign financial support and technology transfer, going to be if you look beyond Nigeria? And so she's actually looking at the African continent as a whole, not just Nigeria.
Okay, right. So when I was talking about the Nigerian energy transition plan, and I said Nigeria has set the pace for other African countries, in terms of energy transition plan. So they have we've set up a very robust energy transition plan, and other countries, begin to think in that direction today. So the last question on the impact of solar power and the impact of technology and attractive finance. Right now, I started out by saying we have to think about a mix, moving from fossil-based and move towards the more renewable. There's a lot of funding, that is waiting and available, looking for very good bankable projects, right? So it's just the job of the project sponsor to make sure that projects are, well put together. The impact is huge because it will really totally, transform the way we see power. There's a lot of need for electricity and energy security in the whole of Africa. If you look at I think our population is in Africa, if I'm not mistaken, is about 2.5 billion. And I can say about maybe 50% of us only have access to electricity. And even those of us that even have access to the electricity might not even always be constant. There will be times of fluctuations and all that. So there's room for solar, there's room for a lot of development, and there's room for projects that are good and tangible that want to attract the right kind of investors. So the impact is very powerful. It's very, very powerful if, just to keep putting those projects together and seeking the right kind of finance.
I hope that, Dikshita, your question has been rightly answered. If you have a follow-up question, please do. And then if you are here and then you have a question and you haven't yet asked, please go ahead and then put your question in the Q&A box. We're going to read it for you. And then Olawunmi will give you the right answer to it. Olawunmi, my very last question. I mean, we are a women-based organization. WIFIN is all girls, is all women. We're always pushing the women. We're just a little bit biased the men, but it's not about bias. It's just about focusing, getting a niche market that we want to impact. There are other people who also concentrate on women. So I cannot end this webinar without asking you, where are women in all this? What does all this mean for the woman business leader? What does all these mean for the woman professional? Is there anything you would want to say about that?
Okay. Yes. So investors are now focused, especially impact investors now, they are focused on concepts like looking through a gender lens. When they are trying to assess a project, they are focused on diversity. So they would ask questions like, we're trying to gather information about how many women directors are on your board, how many women are employed full-time on this project, or how many of the women are contract staff, or how many entrepreneurial opportunities are you developing, for women? How many women are you empowering? So they want to see that diversity, inclusion of women. So this creates an opportunity for women, both in career and business, because you see that there are some jobs that once you see the job opening, they say women are encouraged to apply because a lot of people want to increase the participation of women. You see funds that are created specifically for women, and they'll say women businesses or women entrepreneurs apply for this fund. AFDB had one, if I think it's probably closing on the 31st, on funding for women organizations and all that. There are fellowship programs that are our leadership program, and we feel is such, something like that, where we're created specifically to empower women, to mentor, to, targeted at women business leaders. What it's doing is to bridge the skill gap. So women should actively look for opportunities to improve themselves, to apply with confidence to fit into those positions of need, especially when you're trying to build a career. You see people will submit their investment proposal and they will put names of women, even if they didn't have any women on board, but because they know that it's important there's a gender lens that is looking at your project. So you want to, tap onto that. So definitely the opportunities are there. It's just for us to actively seek it and continuously empower ourselves.
All right, Olawunmi. Wow, the opportunities are available. We just have to empower ourselves. Basically, why we have organizations like WIFIN stepping in the gap and bringing empowerment to your doorstep as a woman, as a female, as a professional. And we are here for that. My questions have been exhausted. Olawunmi has done justice to all my questions. The questions that came in, we have read them. We're in the final minutes of the webinar. And so if you still have a burning question that you haven't asked yet, you have the final opportunity to put it in here. But if you don't, like I said earlier, Olawunmi, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Brockville Investment Limited, is highly available on LinkedIn. She's one of the professionals you would have access to on LinkedIn, responding on time and I mean, she's always available for young people who are seeking insight and knowledge and who want her help. And so, I mean, on the credit and ticket of WIFIN, you can reach out to her and they get to learn more and more from her. Olawunmi, I would want to ask you to say your very final words to our audience today. I want you to say your final words before we bring the webinar to a close.
Okay, thank you so much, Gifty, and thank you, WIFIN. It's been a fantastic pleasure. I've enjoyed, discussing this topic, and I believe that the participants and even people that will listen later, they will find a lot of value in what has been said today, right? So as a professional, you need to just understand the value chain of the investment and finance, and try to see how you want to create your career trajectory and where you want to sit, such that you can look for the right opportunities to look for the right opportunities to adapt to. Then as a business owner as well, you just need the clear understanding of the kind of vision you see for your organization, where you want to get to, where you want to reach, and such that if you have that clear vision, then you begin to look for opportunities that will take you on that path. So thank you again, WIFIN. It's been a pleasure discussing this topic.
All right, Olawunmi, you're welcome. It's been an absolute delight. I mean, having you on here for the number of minutes we have had you explaining and taking us through the energy transition in Nigeria and how to finance it, what is important and what is next. We are so grateful. I mean, on behalf of the Women in Finance and Investment Network, I want to say a very big thank you for spending time with us this afternoon. Of course, for the viewers, those who are here today and those who will be joining in a week time, those who will be watching this video in 2 weeks time, a month later, I hope that you are able to glean as much information as we have done here today.